open mic after that. We really want to hear your feedback and thoughts on where this whole movement has to go. So we're going to give tribute to some of the people who have most significantly impacted the practice and the thinking. And these people include the late Rob Krier, who passed away last year, as talented as his younger brother Leon. And I want to say, based on his impact on Leon, as impactful or more than Leon himself in certain ways, of a voice that I have been following since when I was in graduate school and even before that in the 80s. Alan Greenberg, acknowledged as the finest classical architect in the US for many decades, retired his office. He shut down his office in the last several years. I have no idea what he's doing now, but he remains in my heart as one of the torches that illuminate this passage. Maurice Culot, who will speak later today, those of you who have not yet heard of him or really learned to appreciate him, is one of the greatest doers in our field. He has published over 500 first-class books. You ought to own all of them on architecture and urbanism, immaculately researched and perfectly produced, beautifully illustrated. He really is up there. I met him recently, and it was just an awakening, and we will get to know him together later today. Michael Mehaffy has been working, I think we have a typo in his name as when, it's EY at the end of Mehaffy. He is a mover in the Christopher Alexander movement, pushing the Alexander doctrine forward in his way. I have known him for many decades, and I think that he's one of the more thoughtful people in our movement. And Sussman is one of the genuinely independent and creative thought leaders we have, focused on aesthetic experience and neuroscience. Thank you for all the work you're doing. Nikos Salingaros, I think he was the first who actually moved the discussion into something resembling genuine science. His interest in fractals and his interest in the built environment, tying it back to mathematics, I think is an extremely valuable, and he is one of the greater supporters of the Classic Planning Laboratory. So his interests are broad, and he continues to inspire many. Robert A.M. Stern is the king of architecture. I think we all know him as such. None of us would be here without him at some level. He has a leading practice, which is both traditional and modernist. And I don't think that there's a single architectural individual who has worked harder on his legacy than Mr. Stern. Alan Jacobs wrote the great book, Great Streets, and has changed all our lives in terms of understanding what goes into streets. He's definitely a leader. Pete Miller has his traditional building AIM publication, whatever it is, a company where he has pushed effortlessly, not effortlessly, with total effort, diligently, to somehow find the interface, the intersection of construction, design, and publication to promote traditional design. He is very important to the community as a whole, and we honor him as well. I want to also add to this fabulous list of people, Christine Franck, who was one of the primary educators at the Institute of Classical Architecture and Art. She was a teacher of mine, and I got from her one of the best design crits I ever got in my life, devoted my whole career to design, and she's really good at what she does. Here, Christine. Dimitri Porphyrios is a person who since the 70s has been really leading some of the new traditional work. He's got a particular approach which many of the people practicing today have adopted, and we will see his mind in the hands, in the works of others today. Mr. Sagharchi is one of the great British architects who's done an enormous amount of work. I think he comes from the Porphyrios school. I'm really thinking that some of the folks who worked in Val d'Europe, they really found the place where good architecture meets a very tight budget, and they need to be acknowledged for how they did not lose the music, even though the band was reduced. John Simpson is one of those as well, and John is probably the voice who has the most fun doing architecture. He's always got something outrageous in his designs. I think he really needs to be lauded for his sense of humor and sensibility in general. Javier Cenicacelaya is pulling in Iberia for doing the right things, working diligently. Jorge Loyzaga is a man unique in the Americas. I like to think of him as the only classical architect south of the Rio Grande, and I mean all the way down to Patagonia. He is a primary architectural practitioner in the traditional vein. You need to know about him and know of him and of his work. He has probably one of the finest practices. He is in his 90s and still active. He has pulled the classical wagon alone in Mexico for the past 50 years, Jorge Loyzaga. And Stefanos Polyzoides, who I have known since the 80s and who now leads Notre Dame, the school at Notre Dame, a level-headed and fine leader. He's among the original group that founded the Congress for the New Urbanism. I don't know somebody who works more from a combination of integrity and a feeling of responsibility to the community as a whole. Stefanos, we salute you and all the others. And now we're going to go straight into our first sessions. We're going to have Nicole Rogers speak about sustainability and stewardship of forests